It's Wednesday, December 17th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. The province's deficit has skyrocketed to $948 million, something the finance minister calls deeply troubling, but has optimism for 2026. Today on the show, reaction and analysis. Let's do it. Full studio today, so we'll have an opening salvo of a conversation, and then we will, a little bit later, we'll open the phone lines if you got thoughts for us. In the meantime, you can always text us, 709-327-8206, the signal at cbc.ca for emails. Three political watchers, participants, folks, commentators here. Kristina Ennis is in each has previously ran for a provincial party. Kristina Ennis is back, has previously run for the PCs. How you doing?
Great.
Excellent. Thanks for coming in. John Whelan is here, who's been previously ran with the Liberals, and you've been kind of connected to the party for,
in the background.
In the background,
deep in the background,
deep background. You're my deep background guest.
Yeah, Toby, Rob Lowe, whoever you want to talk about.
Excellent. Laurabel is back as well. How you doing? So previously ran with the NDP. Thank you for coming.
Great.
And we have a money guy here, a markets watcher, commentator, Larry Short from Short Financial. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm unaffiliated.
Unaffiliated today. So a markets watcher who is unaffiliated. Yes, which is important to say. So I just gave the that deficit there ballooned to $948 million, up from the last projection, $626 million given by the previous Liberal government in August. Some quotes around it from Mr. Party, the finance minister. There's no sugarcoating. This number is deeply troubling. These structural changes will take time to fix. He said there is optimism, though. Newfoundland and Labrador's economy is projected to lead all provinces with 5.3% economic growth in 2026. So that was the cause for optimism there. Let's do a whip around on initial thoughts. And John, you're new to the show. I mean, I've known you for a long time. We've known each other, but you're new to this show. For coming on, we'll go with you.
All right, thanks. I mean, look, if anyone was surprised by that number, they weren't paying attention to the last sort of, 20 years of politics in Newfoundland, right? Posting a record deficit seems to be a habit we get into. And then a government comes into place and, 2 weeks from now is going to be New Year's Eve. Someone at the party I'm going to be at is going to say, my plan for this year is to get myself into shape. And then you'll check it with them in March and you'll be like, how's that going? Well, I'm not, right? And so we need to really come to grips with this as a province, I think. And, there are structural issues. There are, it's a small population spread out over a whole large area. There's a new expectation of what the public service should look like and civil service should look like and what citizens expect of their government. But, for a long time now, we know we have an issue in our justice system. We know we have an issue in our healthcare system. We know we have an issue in sort of labor productivity and how we get stuff done here. And, I'm excited to see the plan from the Tories about how they're going to deal with it because we haven't seen one yet.
Okay. All right. Kristina.
I'd agree with what John said about if anybody was surprised by this number, they haven't really been paying attention. But that said, there's a lot of people who don't really know how our government works. And there's a lot more people paying attention than there used to be. There's another generation of people who've never gone through a transition of government before. I certainly wasn't paying as much attention 10 years ago as I am now. So on the positive side, I'm glad to see more people actually paying attention to this and holding value for learning more about how our democracy works and how government works. And I think that accountability piece is going to be really important going forward and not kind of just resting on our laurels and just letting things play out in government and holding our folks accountable and engaging with your MHA and making sure individuals are informed. That's a bit rambly. Those are kind of my
opening salvo. This
thoughts.
is the start, right? Laurabel, what about yourself?
So I agree a little bit, and then I also have questions.
Yeah.
So yes, I think people should have expected the numbers to be a little bit higher than what we were told. But But this is a jump, I think, for a lot of people. I think from what we were told, what the projected budget would look like if we had ended up with a Liberal government versus what we are seeing now. I think they're saying it's about 50% of an increase. 50% is a big increase for people, and so I think people were expecting a jump, not this much of a jump, and then knowing what people had voted and elected and hoping to see come to fruition with a conservative government, people are probably going to be a little bit hesitant as like, how are you going to make all of these things happen and new promises coming out when, if we think about during the election, all parties presented budgets and plans. Some were a little bit more insightful and more outlined than others, and saying, if you didn't give us a lot of numbers then, and now we're working with a larger deficit than you thought we were going into, how is any of this going to come to fruition? And how are we supposed to be in a better place in 2-4 years, even at the end of next year? So people are cautious and a little bit afraid.
Larry Short, when you were, because me and you were emailing yesterday, post-announcement, then you were on with Chrissy yesterday afternoon and on the go. What are your what was your initial reaction? And after a night to sleep on it, is it the same or has it changed?
Well, I'm the representing the old grumpy male contingent here, and I have been paying attention to this for way longer than 10 years. So the fact is, like John was saying, show up on January 1st and say, I'm going to get in shape this year. We know how to get in shape. We know what the plan is. We know what has to be done. It's called the Des Moines Green Report. Yeah. And it lays out what has to be done. So the previous government and the current government, the previous government deliberately chose not to do it. Okay, deliberately. This is not a case of saying we don't know what to do. We know exactly what has to be done. It is a political cost to do it. And the question is whether or not the current government has the courage to do what has to be done. So if indeed they're going to do it, we're going to see it, of course, in March budget. And traditionally, the way that a government gets reelected is they make all the pain in the first year, and then they got 3 years to get the voters to forgive them. Right, but the hopes and dreams. I mean, even the statement made by the Craig Party, who we have to recognize has the hardest job in the province. Yeah. Look at all the good things going to happen. We're going to grow at 5%. That's kind of sort of going down to the harbor in St. John's and throwing a brick in and expecting that's going to change the high water mark on the tides. It isn't going to. We know what has to be done. The question is whether or not we have the political will to do it. Yeah, I had an email from Bern Kenny, a listener of the show, because speaking of the Green Report, right? Sent me some screenshots of the Green Report for this conversation today, and like what the Green Report says. The public sector in the province is too large. Its high salaries, benefits, and retirement payments are ultimately a tax on those outside the public service and the young people that will be the workforce of tomorrow. Review union contracts and compensation. The province has unfunded public sector pension liabilities. This is all from the Green Report. The province must control its fiscal situation and implement a solid fiscal plan and unsustainable fiscal situation. The current crisis requires that difficult decisions be made in the short term. Expenditure reduction is the major component of reducing the fiscal gap. So that was sent to me by a listener about the Green Report, which we're talking about. What happens, or what could happen, if things keep ticking along of like these big deficits, coupled with the debt we have and the interest on all of that? Because we're not like Canada, we're a small province. Right. Saskatchewan's probably the best. 93, is it? 1993, they hit a wall. They issued $500 million worth of bonds. There were no buyers. And that's it's close to bankruptcy any province has come since Alberta went bankrupt in the 1930s. And yes, Alberta went bankrupt in the 1930s. So what happens then is that the bonds that were going to be issued don't get funded, but all the bonds that Saskatchewan has all then get downgraded. So it's a really big effect, and means the cost of borrowing goes up significantly, and we're in trouble. And then, so what happened in that case, the feds stepped in, spoke to the bond buyers, the institutions, and said, do us a favor this time, we'll remember you for the next issue. And then Saskatchewan, under the NDP government, brought in an austerity budget that closed down a whole series of hospitals, did all the cutbacks, all the things that are talking about in the Green Report. That was what was done in order to bring Saskatchewan back from the edge. That's the sort of thing that we could face here. And the difficulty with it is that has to be done suddenly. And the people that hurt the most when you do this thing are the poor.
Right.
Right. So if we don't make these decisions now, at some point in the future, particularly if we get a change in the federal government, if we get a non left-wing leaning government, we get a right-wing leaning government.
Do we still think the current government's left?
It's kind of central.
Just 'cause, a lot of people call it a PC government.
It is. Yes, he certainly is the best conservative prime minister I think we've seen in a long time. But the point being is, if we get an even more extreme right-wing government who just says, no, it is enough of this, then this could really be the chickens coming home to roost, and we had to make decisions really, really fast. So we know what needs to be done. And maybe we need to do, the current premier seems to like referendums. Maybe we need to lay it out as part of, here is the budget, and have a referendum.
Oh my gosh,
God.
that is...
Larry.
Get out.
But then we all get to say, right? And if we don't, we all then end up with the implications of saying that we don't want to do it.
Yeah, because who's going to right the fiscal ship for this place? Because, as we kind of established, historically speaking, hasn't. When was the last government to really kind of the Green Report came out and not a whole lot happened.
Wells.
That's what I'm going to say. Clyde Wells.
Clyde
right?
Wells.
So,
yeah.
93 or something?
Yeah, and it was an attempt in 2016, but I mean, Kathy Bennett was just crucified.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And part of that was how it was presented, right? So it was the public relations around it was poorly done, but the point is that no one sees the implications of this until it actually happens, right? But when it does happen, it can really hurt people. So it's one of those things where no one wants to hear a prophet prophesizing. Everybody wants a savior, and by the time you get to the point where you're going to need a savior in this thing, this could be really, really bad.
Okay, so for the way forward, and for you three, the rest of you here, any thoughts on are we seeing?
I can weigh in.
Yeah, sure.
On
Kristina,
behalf of the grumpy younger women.
Sure.
There you go. Yes, Grumpy Younger Women Club. There we go.
Disgruntled lady.
Yep.
I'm still very optimistic, which is difficult to be sometimes, given a lot of the situations that myself and my peers find ourselves in these days, especially from a financial position. But we have some really great things in the province that I think we could have better outcomes in. Okay. There's lots of good ideas happening, like digital transformation is one. Yep. But how are we approaching the operationalizing those initiatives such that we're getting the outcomes that were intended, which will hypothetically save in costs over time, health in particular. An unhealthy population is a very costly population, and there's a huge gap in access to primary care, of course. And then people are getting sicker. That is more costly. That hospital over across the street is absolutely chinched. There's nowhere for people to go. And those things just kind of snowball. And I don't know when they started to snowball, but I would love to see more outcomes-oriented decision-making. So if we are going to continue to invest in XYZ program, I, as a member of the public, would love to know and be comfortable and trust that the government knows where they're trying to go with that, such that there are metrics or KPIs associated with a particular program to measure success, and it's not just a program that isn't having the intended outcome that just keeps getting money funneled into it.
Okay. And then, so when you think about healthcare, you're trying to save money because it's fiscal update revealed healthcare spending has continued to climb. It's $430 million higher than anticipated in the budget. Now, the finance minister says we've inherited these numbers. He also said he had 2 meetings with Health Minister Leila Evans since being sworn in. John, what are you he's saying they've inherited the numbers and said there's 2 meetings with the health minister. They're in the same party, right? But it just kind of almost sounded a little bit distant of the conversations that need to happen when it comes to health.
I think they're actually in the same building too, right?
Yeah,
so look,
and the same cabinet, right? Exactly.
And they both had the same mandate letter, thankfully. So it's really easy to know what the premier told them to do, since it was just a copy paste job, right? So I think one of the key things, and Kristina brought this up. In defense of Kristina, I think Tony Blair said it first, right? Deliverology, and then Trudeau adopted it, and then I think Blair came here and met with Premier Fury for a little bit. We talk a lot about
Tony
measuring.
Blair's fault.
Well, maybe, right? Yeah. But so we're talking about measuring outcomes. But a key part of that is also inputs. We've got a really unhealthy population on this island. We've got food insecurity issues. We've got all that stuff. And the issue becomes when you start attacking one single KPI, the delivery of that whole system skews to go to the KPI, right? And so we've seen that in any number of ways. There's big books written on it. But once you start measuring something, the system will adjust itself to deliver to those measurements as opposed to full-on system change. And I think that's a really concerning thing. So if you actually read that, was it 5 pages or 9 pages, the fiscal update that got produced yesterday, I mean, it's glowing. I mean, it must have been written for the bond market. There's no doom and gloom in any of that fiscal update that got produced. And part of the reason why is because we're meant to put, a nice coat of paint on this old boat and pretend that it's fit for sea. And the reality is, and Larry alluded to it with the referendum, but I think what we're really talking about is a shared public consensus around, one, is there a problem? Because I think some people don't think there is. And if you read that fiscal update yesterday, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, currently run by the Progressive Conservative Party of Newfoundland, released a document that made the economic picture look cheery. And I don't think anybody around this table thinks we have a cheery economic system. And
the Liberals have done the same in the past too, right?
Everybody does it in the Westminster system of government because it's a cute little thing we play, right? Yeah. But the reality is we're going to need to start having some real straight talk around where we are, where we're headed, what we can afford, what we can't afford, what do we want to keep, what would be nice to have, what do we need to get rid of. And if you want a better example of this in real time, go down to Atlantic Place, where the provincial court is currently non-operational.
Yep.
And that hits victims, that hits offenders, that hits innocent people who've been charged with a crime, that hits businesses who are trying to use small claims, that hits municipalities that are trying to get their tickets enforced, that hits people who have a ticket they shouldn't have gotten. I mean, that's a real systematic failure that nobody's talking about.
Yeah. So how do we do, like you said, like Larry said, you've got that, there's the referendum throw out question there, right? But it is a big group discussion around how do we do a reset in this province. I asked, when I interviewed the Premier for the This is Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, I asked him about, like, the Liberals had, an education accord, they had a health accord, and I said, like, do we need something like, a financial accord? And he said, yes, but without all, like, paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to outside experts. He's like, he said we need to look at something, right? Now, didn't hear much of that yesterday. Laurabel, thoughts?
An accord, sure. But what we've seen when both consecutive governments, no one's doing anything with either of the accords they have put out. Regardless if it's the health accord, the education accord, you create this document, you're not implementing all the things that need to be done. We had the Moya Greens report. We had a plan. And what we're actually seeing is the cost of poverty. We are seeing the cost of having a poor population. Our healthcare system is experiencing what it's experiencing because people don't have a primary care practitioner to go to. So you have people sitting in the emergency room. We're not taking care of the people who operate our healthcare system, which means we're flying in nurses at millions of dollars to staff a hospital when we could train, pay our nurses and our healthcare practitioners what they need in order to work in a way that they can provide the service of care needed for the people of this province. We have inflationary costs on food costs. People can't afford to eat in our province, and it's not like we're investing in agriculture in a way that would treat agriculture as an economically viable platform in order to support economic growth in our province. We're treating that as this nice to have, but we're not creating food in our province. We're not looking at ways to make food affordable in our province, which means people can't eat in this province, which is going to have further implications on our healthcare system. People can't work in our province because we're not treating economic growth as a pathway toward. In the Minister Party was talking about oil. Oil is not going to save us. Oil is fluctuating. We're saying we're going to bring in all these barrels and it's going to be at this cost. The price of oil could drop at any point in time. And if we rely on only oil as our only way of increasing the economic prosperity of this province, pardon my French, but we're in a very bad situation.
I was worried where you going to go when you said pardon my French, but that was nowhere near as bad as
I remember that we're on live radio and I can't say the thing.
Here we go.
I'm like, I don't need to be bleeped on the radio, so we're just going to.
But we have no delay.
We're in that situation, so we're not looking at the things that could potentially put us in a better situation. And I think it's unfortunate. And I'm afraid, like you said, you're speaking for the cranky young women. Everyone in this province should be a little bit afraid about what tomorrow looks like, not the next 2 years, not the next 4 years, what tomorrow looks like. Because if you're in that pivotal point of if you lose your job, this $1 billion is just going to add to that. There's nowhere we can go.
Larry Short, go for it.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. So I was joking about referendum, but maybe not, because the reason why that no government will implement the Green Report is that it's basically political suicide, right? So the fear is that a government will come out and here's the budget, and then you will get members cross the floor. So what is it that the Green Report said was effectively, you got to close some of these hospitals. I mean, the minute you say that, that's a problem, right? And that's when you get members standing up saying, yes, I agree with you, but not my hospital. And if you close my hospital, I'm gone to the other party. And the other party will say, oh, we'll never do any of that. Yeah. So you have to have a political consensus of some form within the province. But again, as others have pointed out, nobody sees this as being a problem, right? Because is it going to affect me tomorrow? It's not. But we don't know when it's going to affect me. We've heard this, as everyone has said, there's always the government saying, well, our costs have gone up again, right? And there's no control on that cost figure. We don't hear of a discussion about here's what we have done to cut costs. That's not it may be in a mandate letter, but we don't seem to put any value with anybody standing up and doing it. So the difficulty is, again, we know what has to be done. You've got to close some hospitals. You've got to lay off some people there because we're spending more money per capita than anywhere else in the country. So we're spending all that money on healthcare, but we're not getting the outcomes, right? Because the money is not being spent on frontline. So where is it being spent? Spending on buildings, on maintenance, on middle management. Well, can't really talk about that because so we know what needs to be done. The question is whether or not we have the political will to do it.
And poverty was mentioned in the fall. The Jimmy Pratt Foundation and Choices for Youth released a report card on child and family poverty. 25% of children under 6 in this province live in poverty, the highest recorded in Canada, 4 points higher than the 21% recorded last year. Racialized children experience poverty at 31%, double the national rate of 15.5. Plus, housing and food insecurity issues are escalating. Young mental health indicators are, between 2015 and 2022, the proportion of youth who rated their mental health as very good or excellent dropped by 35% compared to the average of 23% nationally. So, as we keep spending more and more money, like we've mentioned, we've got these bad health outcomes, high rates of food insecurity. But then you get something in the news of with the tariffs and the American alcohol, it's like, well, we're going to donate that to food banks. Continue.
Food banks are not a solution. Food banks were created during, I think, right after the Second or First World War as a stopgap.
In the 80s here, yeah.
As a stopgap measure because governments were not able to support people. They were not supposed to be a long-standing solution to food insecurity issue. And treating them like they are the answer to all is not going to save people. Food banks are usually volunteer-run, which means you need volunteers to be able to be in there. There are people donating what they can when they can. People are getting to a point they don't have anything to donate. If we don't have adequate, accountable systems to actually fix the issue, it's adding another Band-Aid to one that's peeling off. That's not going to solve the thing.
And we had Kim Dreddy in last week, Jimmy Pratt Foundation Executive Director, who made the point around that part of the discussion that she said that poverty is a policy choice for governments. Anyone else with thoughts on this? Go ahead.
We have the third highest GDP per capita in Canada. Saskatchewan is second and Alberta is first. Yep. And if you take a look at the core civil service per capita, we're about the same as PEI. We're about in the Atlantic average, right? So if you just thought on those two things, our structural deficit shouldn't be nearly where it's to. I think the problem is, one of the problems, we could spend all day talking about them. If you look at, we're so loath to admit we've made an error or something needs an adjustment. And, when I was knocking on doors, when they made changes, and this is the Liberal government that did it, but when we made changes to the Urban and Rural Planning Act, when that got passed, there's a section in it that actually references the wrong section. And so no one went back and fixed it. Everyone knew it says 46, it should say 47, or if it says 81, it should, I forget it now, but there's an error in there. We didn't bother to change it. In the same way, the access to information system in this province is broken. If you take a look at what the provincial government and municipal governments pay for ATIP coordination, it'd blow your socks right off. And you have to balance the public interest of access to information to the public interest of efficient operation of government. And ATIP requests are now being used maliciously by bad actors. And so, but no one's having that conversation. And, no one's, you get Mike on every now and then, the retired Crown prosecutor, to talk about how Crowns are drowning in data and like trying to get through disclosure because we've never adjusted that system to reflect where the courts moved since. And so every now and then you need to pause and say, it doesn't matter how we got here.
Yeah.
The question is, how do we move forward out of here? And, the I know you are, but what am I approach of politics over the last sort of 30 years in this province has to stop. And we need to recognize that we are on an island and a big chunk of land in the middle of nowhere. We need to figure this out together, because if we don't, like Larry said, someone's going to come knocking someday and it'll be out of our hands like it has been before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what is it, 33? You're talking
Yeah,
commission of government.
yeah,
exactly. Go ahead. Thoughts?
I love what John said about we have to work together. That's not really an option to continue on this path. And my superpowers, I always bring up cooperation outside the overpass. And I'm going to say the bad word regionalization.
Yeah.
But municipalities in this province are very disproportionately affected in comparison to other provinces because they do have that regional cooperation, even if it's small regions in counties. So you have these little tiny municipalities that might have one full-time staff or a part-time staff, and then maybe a couple heavy equipment operators. They have the same responsibility as Gander and Grand Falls. There's only three cities. It's only St. John's, Mount Pearl, and Corner Brook that have their own city act. Right, John? Yeah, I think.
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah. Everyone else is under, looking at you.
He's also the fact checker for the show.
Oh, great.
Fact
checker.
Checks the mail on that one.
So even when there are programs that municipalities or regions want to take advantage of to try and contribute positively to some of these problems, housing is an example, how are they're expected to put together these huge proposals and compete with like a county in Nova Scotia who's applying for the same pot of funding? Like how can we as a province access these programs at the federal level even that could make a big difference in solving some of these things, because we internally can't get our stuff together and have enough resources to actually put our best foot forward to make an impact?
Yeah. No, of course. And it's I've talked about it a fair bit on the show, right? The small towns, municipalities across Newfoundland and Labrador being unable to access whether it's federal money, also dealing with things like the impacts of climate change in real time, everything from water, sewage, upgrades to, like I was talking a few weeks back, we were talking to someone, I'm trying to remember the municipality. Anyways, they have to move like the whole pump house for water needs to move because of flooding and the potential for issues. And you're like, well, they don't have the budget for that. And so anyways, it's all out there. Folks, this is The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. We're talking about the fall fiscal update. We're digging into just what came out from the province, this deficit skyrocketing to $948 million, while the finance minister calls it deeply troubling, also has some optimism for 2026. I've got three political watchers here, Kristina, Ennis, Laurabel, John Whelan. We also have a markets watcher and commentator, Larry Short here. If you want to either join the discussion or send us a note, you can email us, thesignal@cbc.ca. You can text us, 709-327-8206. If you want to give us a shout, 1-800-563-8255. An email from Fred here, listener of the show, Fred Skanes. We must remember that a good majority of the working population works in governments at all three levels in the province. They are a major economic driver. While I believe that we need to trim how many work in government, it will have a concurrent effect on consumption, therefore the economy. Our provincial government has very little courage in doing much of anything. Signed, Fred. So thank you for that comment. Go ahead, Larry.
So rather than wait until a commission of government shows up, what if we have a pre-commission of government, which is an all-party group?
Yeah.
Because if the threat is that the minister comes in with a budget that will potentially cause members to cross to other parties. All the parties agreed and said, look, this is a crisis. This is a real crisis. We're going to face it now and take care of it. And therefore, there's a committee that is going to make these decisions. That may be an avenue. That may be a process. Now, it means then that the current government effectively gives up some part of the actual determination of where the money is going to be spent or cut or otherwise. But we need something like that. Like you're talking about working together. This is and finally facing the issue before it becomes a real problem. That's a way where maybe it's the next generation that needs to come up and say, look, enough of this mucky muck, you old guys, and let's do this right. From this point on, we are claiming our future. Because if we don't make these decisions, we're dropping this into the hands of our kids. Yeah. Right? And it's making it worse for them. So potentially, we need to think of some sort of solution other than the continuation of here's what our forecast is, and 2 years from now we'll have a balanced budget. Because that's all that we've heard, by the way, since I think it was 2011.
It's funny how the math always maths that way.
It's
though,
always
right?
2 years.
Yeah,
always 2 years away. And even in 2011, and it was Jerome Kennedy was the minister of 2011, minister of finance, and we were booming. I mean, we had oil prices up. We had
this is peak oil time. Yeah,
and we still had a $500 million deficit. Yeah. Right,
because back in those times, and correct me on my memory on it, because you would have these deficits, but then they'd give the updates because of oil and also Labrador and mining. They'd be like, oh, actually, we got a surplus now. That's not from planning. No, that's just because
they'd lowball the estimate on the barrel price, right?
Yeah. Intentionally. The costs have continue to rise, but we got a bonus because oil prices went higher. Right. And the other part is, I think that all due respect to the previous administration, Liberal government, I think that they were counting on the development of the Churchill River as being the savior out there. Is that's the development that was going to pull the province out of this mess?
I mean, that was like, if you look at the focus of the conversation points during the election, I mean, the Churchill Falls and the MOU was from the Liberals, and correct me, John, if I'm wrong on it, but that's like, it was out front and center, right? Like, that was the message that was going on.
That was the message, yeah. Everything will be fine once we get that we get that deal done. And if it is anywhere near the numbers that I've seen or have been told, and we'll find out, after the review has been done, because I have to say that the one person that is there is Mike Wilson, who's in part of that, and he needs to be applauded throughout the province for standing up the way he did. That's great to hear. So I do have confidence that I want to see what that report says. But the net effect is we have to work as if we didn't have that. Yeah. Right. And then if that shows up, that's bonus. But we need to have an all-party sort of full court press on this before it becomes to the point where a commission of government is appointed by somebody outside.
Anyone else on this?
I think financial transparency. At this point, we keep talking about these funds that they're like just arbitrary government funds. These are taxpayer dollars. This is the money of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and I think they deserve to know exactly what it is. So when that budget comes out, that we can actually say, this is where the money's coming from. This is where it's going, because this is our money. This $1 billion, and this is our debt. So we need transparency to know where it's coming from, where it's going. And if there can be an all-party solution, great, because at the end of the day, I think a couple governments ago was said that the birthright of the children of Newfoundland and Labrador is debt. Well, great, they have even more so that they're waking up with today. And so we have to have a solution, and it can't be this party did this or this party did that. You've done that for as long as this province has existed. We've done the flip-flop of we came into this, we came into that. We have to be responsible now, because I know I'm not sleeping well at night. I don't know about the rest of the people around the table, the rest of the people in this province. It's not something we can continue to do. And if we don't have a solution forward, one that people are willing to take responsibility over and not at the cost of those who are the working poor, because like in the new year, we have negotiations that are coming up. Does this mean that people are going to lose their jobs? Does this mean that people's wages are going to be cut? What then happens with the provincial government going to bargaining with people? Where are we going from there? Whose lives are now in danger?
Just had a text come in. People reach the show all sorts of ways. Also by texting me personally. Hi, Adam. This is not rocket science. Look to Iceland and Norway. We must take control of our natural resources, hydro, mining, fishery. Our resources have been used to enrich other provinces like Quebec and Canada, has used our fishery to build relationships with other countries. Sue Rose, thank you so much for the text on that one. Any other thoughts to jump on either what the text, what Larry said, what Laurabel was saying?
I'll just jump in. So, sure, I remember... Geez, it was around, I want to say it was around 99, or it was the anniversary. And she's a doctor now, but she used to be a CBC reporter. Her name's escaping me. So anyway, she
Yes.
Yeah, I bumped into her this summer on Signal Hill. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She interviewed me and my parents, because my parents were both Newfoundlanders who became Canadians, and they interviewed me. And of course, with only the vim and vigor a 17-year-old has, I was like, no, we Newfoundland independence all the way. And my parents went up one side of me, down the other, because they saw what the country of Canada, the Dominion of Canada, was like pre-Confederation. And I think that relationship has gone both ways.
Dominion of Newfoundland.
Dominion of Newfoundland. That's right. Sorry. Yeah. They've seen what that relationship looked like on both sides, and that is supposed to be the fundamental part of federalism. Now, Quebec is playing a bit of a cute game with how it structures itself, and you can argue resources should come out of our transfer payments for the calculation since they're finite. But on the whole, I think and especially in this geopolitical environment we have internationally, we need to recognize being part of the federal government of Canada, the Confederation of Canada, has a lot of benefit to this province. Yeah. And so we don't control our sovereignty and our foreign border the way those countries could. But I think we go down a dangerous path if we start talking about independence from Canada, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard that too. Same period, right? Growing up in '99, me as a 19-year-old, similar thoughts to you, and then being corrected or told by other people around me about what it's all meant over the years, right? Kristina?
I participated in the 75th Anniversary Confederation show that
yes,
we did
yeah.
here.
Great
was
show.
that last
Thanks
year?
Again
That
for
was
that.
last.
Yeah.
I think that might have been the last time.
Time's a flat circle for me,
here.
so I can't. Yeah.
I learned a lot doing research for that show because it occurred to me at the time that I really didn't know much about the details of what happened and kind of the impact that resulted from that. And something that I learned is that it feels like the same issues keep coming up over and over again. It's just like a slightly adjusted modern version of the same issues. And I think I've come to the conclusion in my own brain that there's nobody at fault per se for this situation that we're in. And at the end of the day, all of us want to be able to say XYZ is in the best interests of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, and that we are all being respected. And I think from a collaboration perspective, if we want to get all of us to collaborate, we really need to have kind of our own terms of reference, I'll say, together of what are we all working towards? We want a sustainable province. We want to be self-sufficient. We want to maintain self-determination for our resources. There's lots of conversations to be had about natural resources and our opportunities there. I feel like I'm going down a philosophical path here.
It's okay.
There's just a lot to consider, and there's a lot of different lived experiences and backgrounds coming to the table who face very different issues on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of people talking about the MOU.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of people who have the bank calling them every day or got their internet cut off or their cell phone, and they could not care less about a resource development because they can't see past the end of today.
Yeah, if you're a family
need to
using
take all of those into consideration.
If you're family or single person, whatever, using the food banks here, worried about, or if you're a parent skipping meals, reality, right, for some folks in the province with the high rates of food insecurity and child poverty and family poverty we have here, you're probably not thinking that much because you don't have the bandwidth to think about that other side. But then it's the thought to kind of tease out a point that you have there as well about the province. Like three of you here, with the exception of Larry, but three of you here ran for the politics, right? You're all from the community. People know you. I know you. And it's the thing about Newfoundland and Labrador. We're small enough to maybe be able to have these, for what Larry said, to have these conversations to kind of maybe push stuff forward, right? Yes, we're supposed to have an opposition, and in this case, two opposition parties, and you got the government, and that has to function with debate and everything else. But it's still this bigger conversation of where we need to go and what needs to happen for given the fiscal situation that we're in, and how all the points that you folks are talking about. And by the way, Dear Mr. Smallwood, Confederation in the Words of Those Who Lived It, great new book that's out, Letters to Joey Smallwood around the time of Confederation. And yes, the themes, everything from potholes to poverty and all the other stuff that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have talked about for decades. Larry.
So understand that we are not a poor province. What the problem? So let me give you a parallel. What I do for a living is I see rich people. That's what I do for a living. Okay?
Yeah.
And every
That's why I've never seen you professionally.
I aspire to solicit your services someday, Larry.
And in seeing, in a good number of times in my career, I've been asked to go and, there's a referral to go see such and such a person or a couple. And I go and see them, and they're, big house and expensive cars in the driveway and this sort of thing. And I've sat with them and said, you do not need a wealth advisor. You need a credit counselor.
Yeah.
Okay. Because what you're spending, the money that's coming in the door and then it's going out, is so much. We're in the same situation here. We have the revenue. That's what John was saying. Is that third highest GDP in one of the richest countries in the world. So it's not the revenue side; it's the cost side. But until again, when I walked in here for the interview, I said, "Are we starting a new party today?" Well, I feel like we need to have some sort of a new party. And maybe it is that there has to be coming from another generation to say, we don't want to play by these rules anymore. We need to find some way to build the consensus to actually tackle the situation, because there's no reason for the poverty of those kids, right?
Well, when
it's
you
just
look
the
at
money
grocery
is not being
stores,
allocated.
there's no shortage of food in this. I know there's a food security conversation we can have for when
Yes.
supply lines stop, but there's
Right.
no shortage of food in this province,
Right.
and there's enough for everyone.
Okay, so where's the money being spent, right? That's and that's the magic question is how did wages go up in particular sectors? How did go back to Iceland, for example,
Yeah.
right? So Iceland, 380,000 people. We've got 540,000, right? They have 3 hospitals. Okay, what do we have? We have many more, and I know that we're larger, but not by that much. And I know the distribution of population is there. So there has to be another way to do this. All the way back in 2019, I did a lecture at the Department of Economics at Memorial University, and was talking about different solutions for healthcare. To be able to enable nurse practitioners to do a lot more than what they could, and pharmacists to do a lot more than what they could. And there's a little bit of movement towards that, but not sufficient enough to make a big enough difference. We have to be able to think differently than what we've done over the last, particularly 20 years. We have to have a different focus. So I'm dying to see what's going to come up, show up in March. But if there's any recommendations that I could have that the government might be listening to, it is hold a whole series of hearings ahead of time and try to build a consensus about you need to make some cuts, but you also need to enable and empower the people in the medical profession who can deliver this to do it at a cheaper price, cheaper way, and you've got to start talking about closing down some healthcare facilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost because the public consultation side, I find it interesting because David Vardy came out, the former head of the Public Utilities Board, saying, well, when it comes to the MOU in Churchill Falls, there should be public consultations as a thought. But then to go way further on this, and I think it's something people might be able to wrap their heads around simpler. It's like public consultations of where are we with this, the fiscal situation, and where should we go with it, and how do we kind of hear from folks about what does get cut and where and how. Anyone else on that thought? John?
So I, one of the things I do in my real life is, I'm a workplace investigator, which means I lift the hood on a lot of different shops, right? And some of those are core government, some of those are agency boards, commissions, some of those are private sector. And I think there's an economic term called total factor production, which is the little bit of growth you couldn't explain by new inputs going in, right? And so one of the examples is if you have a clothing, you're manufacturing clothing. If you put on nice music in the background, productivity goes up, right? And so that would be a total factor production. It didn't cost you any more to put on the right radio station, but when you put on the right radio station, everyone's happier, they work faster.
Yeah.
When you get into a lot of and the closer you get to St. John's, the worse it is, by and large. The administrative burden is what I would call of a lot of these large organizations. So much so that when you get in there and start asking questions that they haven't asked to themselves in some time, like, who's in charge of this? You get like 4 people coming back to you. Yeah. And you're like, but 4 people can't be in charge of anything. There are 4 people in the outfield in a ball game, but one of them calls the ball. Yeah. And, we spend a lot of time duplicating effort in this island. I don't have any empirical evidence, but I'll just say anecdotally, I've seen enough of it that there's a lot of duplication of effort that doesn't do anything. That doesn't make life better for people in Newfoundland and Labrador. But we also know we have a gap, right? We have a gap between the services people expect and the services people are getting. Now, if we can eliminate that duplication of effort and then redirect those resources, redirect those people to doing things that actually drive services better for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, that's great. And that might mean you have to retrain some employees. It might you figure out how you modernize your workforce. But there's so much duplication of effort, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
So like a bureaucracy accord. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so let me just jump on that because you're talking with people tomorrow about municipal budgets.
Yeah, municipal budget show.
So planning departments. Okay, so the cost of housing in this province, not just here, but right across Canada, gone crazy, right? Yeah. So I have client one, housing developer, client two, housing developer, frustrated beyond tears because they're trying to get an answer as to when am I going to get a permit to be able to build 20 houses. Right?
While we have a housing shortage.
While we have the housing shortage. And it got to the point where one of them called me and said, I've got this big piece of land. I don't want to put it on the market. Can you call? So I called one of the others and I said, how do you feel about this, buying this piece of land? They said, not a chance. I'm getting out of this business. It's incredibly profitable. I mean, the price of housing has gone up, but I can't handle waiting 10 years in order to get approvals. So one of your points, I think, was about KPI. There's no KPI on planning departments. When you put a permit in and say, when am I going to get that back? Right? There's no. Whereas in other provinces, they still haven't conquered it fully, but I think it's Toronto that if you fill in this form according to what's supposed to be done, they'll tell you what the date is when you can expect to get the permit, which allows you then to plan the borrowing, plan hiring the individuals, etc. But in this province, that doesn't exist. Right, so it's a similar sort of thing with all of government. It's a question of is this being delivered efficiently, properly? What are you measuring in order to do it? But that one in particular, if you're having any conversation tomorrow about municipal affairs, it is how do you increase housing, lower the cost of housing in this province? Is you cannot look at each individual house as being a planning project. You've got to provide some sort of standardized, here, build these houses, and you get approval right away, and you'll see a jump in housing starts here like crazy. But it doesn't seem to sit with any conversation that I've had with anybody about it.
But the amount of, so in this case, if it's whatever you want to call it, bureaucratic red tape issues within the system of preventing things like this, we have a culture for Newfoundland and Labrador. There's a bureaucratic culture, the governing culture.
We have a culture of regulatory uncertainty.
Yeah, and to bring in cultural change. Look at the health accord, right? Look at what Dr. Parfey and Sister Elizabeth were trying to kind of push through and talk about. And Dr. Parfey and Sister Elizabeth have been on the show a few times talking about trying to change culture. It's a hard thing.
It'll be 10 years to change the culture of NLHS, right? Yeah. I mean, it's organizations that big, just a ballpark roughly.
Yeah, and then you have to remind everyone, right? Like my former boss used to say, you have to remind everyone of their job every 3 days, which is not inaccurate.
Which I love what John said also about you might have 4 people responsible for something, but no one really ultimately is responsible. But what I've spent a lot of time over across street at the Health Sciences Center in the last couple months, and there's a lot of people over there who don't actually have a job description. They have a title, which is part of a union agreement, a collective agreement. And I spoke to someone one day over there who started a new job in administration, super excited, amazing background. I was ecstatic to see them working in administration over there. Showed up on first day, and their boss said, "So, what do you like to do? In your previous roles in oil and gas, what did you like to do?" So, for someone to show up on their first day of work at this new organization that you would assume hired you to do something specific, to be welcomed in and not to have a seat to sit in, and also not really a role to be onboarded to, doesn't really set us up for success.
Yeah, if you want to extrapolate that out and kind of think of it as you think about the system and think about productivity and where things are going. Laurabel, thoughts?
what do you like to do? I think could have been a very fine question, depending on if they were going to extrapolate. How can I get what you like to do to put it into what you're good at doing
and what you're going to be doing?
Yeah, what you're going to do. I don't think that could necessarily have been the issue in the question. And then if we think of administrative bloat and people having titles, and I was worried when you said because of unionization they have a title, and I don't want us to begin to think that unionization is an issue in this province, because unionization is the reason we have a lot of the things that we have and that are 100%. Not just 100%. Nice to have but necessary to have for us to have in this province. So just especially with collective bargaining coming up next year, I want us to be very aware unionization is good, necessary in our province. If we go back to the issue of how things are set up in this province in terms of frontline workers, administrative professionals, or management, so to speak, we need to ensure that there is a flow of, if you're responsible for something, this is who I have a kid. Who is your grown-up? Who is the person you answer to? And what does your grown-up provide you? Everyone needs to know who their adult is. Every adult needs to also know who they are responsible to. And I think if we think of this not just in organization between NLHS or any of the other government parties, who is our grown-up? Currently, the Conservative government is our adult. Who do they answer to? They answer to the people of this province. The people of this province are saying, we need transparency. We need to know where our money is going, how you're funding the promises. They got elected based on promises of things they would give the people of this province. The budget that they gave us to give us those promises was not a fully costed budget, if we're going to be very honest. There was money. The only revenue source that seemed to come out of the Blue Book was the Futures Fund. The Futures Fund that they have now decided we might not touch, which means we have no revenue, according to that Blue Book. If we look at what the Liberals had promised us before, it was based on the Churchill Fall, the project coming out. That is, as we sit right now, also not a current revenue source. The province, according to those financial statements, has no revenue. Though we do have the largest GDP, we don't know where our money is coming from. We don't know where it's going, and we don't know how we're going to create the services, the programming, the resources the people of this province need. And we continue to look at our fiscal situations. We need to have an honest conversation as to where's our money coming from, where is it going to go, and who is responsible for hitting those KPIs, those key measurements. We can have all the intended outcomes if we want. If we do not have a clear pathway to get there, those are hopes and dreams, and we don't need unicorns anymore.
As the fact checker on the show, I'll just point out the NDP presumed Lower Churchill would go ahead as well, and their cost of platform. Just
we presumed it would go ahead as well. And so if it does go ahead, that would also be revenue coming in. But as it sits right now, the Conservatives have said we don't know if it's going to go ahead.
And we'll wait for 4 months and see what happens. Then possibly also, I guess a referendum might be the word of the day. Final thoughts for everyone. Larry, final thoughts from you on this?
Well, it's the question: Can you handle the truth? Can you face it and say we have?
I think I'm entitled to it.
We have reached the point where it is necessary for the province to make significant changes that are going to hurt in the short run and be beneficial in the long run. Can they take it on the chin? Can they do it? And that's the magic question. Like this whole thought of that we're going to grow by 5% next year, that ranks right up there with my thoughts and prayers. Okay. It isn't an effect. It is not an answer. We need an answer.
All right. John?
Being in opposition's easy. Being in government's hard.
Yeah.
And so, what are we, 46 days in here now? You should know where your office is. You should know where your boardroom is. You should know where your cabinet colleagues' offices are. People are going to need to start hearing a real plan, not just, we're going to put 4 ferries out of the air. And, the Tories should have known they were coming into something of this nature.
Yeah, you're talking about ships, right? Not the Southern Shore ferries.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You don't have to have bread in your pockets, although it'd be nice to have that if it goes as south as it might. And so I think it's time to get serious, and it's time to start articulating a plan for where we're to.
Kristina, final 30 seconds.
I think part of the path for the PCs to have formed a majority in the election was that there's many groups across the province who have felt neglected by the government over the last 10 years, whether it's folks in rural communities or certain populations within the metro regions. And I look forward to hearing a suite of solutions that are based on informed decision-making that are beneficial to everyone and doesn't disproportionately affect others in a negative way.
And final thought, 10 seconds.
I think that we deserve the truth. We deserve a plan that is that we can hold people accountable to. You said, are we ready for the truth? We have to be ready, but we have to have all the truth. We had a government that wasn't giving us all the numbers before, and a government that is making promises without all the numbers. We deserve real numbers. So whatever we make the decision, we can confidently say this was the best decision for the people of the province with the facts we had at the time. And it was all the facts.
All right. Thank you for this. We are out of time here today. Thanks for listening, folks. The Signal at cbc.ca. Tomorrow on the show, we're talking municipal budgets, big communities, small communities, everything in between, what goes into them and how they get brought up. And also, what's a mill rate? We'll talk about that tomorrow. Cheers.